We're seeing a lot of rhetoric coming, for example, from the Biden administration. Even recently, the German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock was voiced very concerning rhetoric concerning Iran. Is the West really concerned about public executions, women's rights, or how do you see that?
Of course not. I mean, what about the 140 executions of Palestinians by the Israeli Defense Force, including my colleague Shireen Abu Akleh from Al Jazeera, who was a U.S. citizen? No, I mean, just look at the difference between the rhetoric about the egregious human rights violations carried out by Israel and those carried out by Iran. Again, it gets into that bifurcation of worthy and unworthy victims, and Palestinians, in the eyes of Washington and most of the West, are unworthy.
You mentioned Palestine. Some people also bring up Saudi Arabia, where public executions happen every year of dissidents, of feminists, of activists. We can also see that in other Gulf monarchies. How come the West is not concerned about the human rights situation there? What are the driving geopolitical and economic factors that hinder any sort of voicing of our politicians and media to address the situation there?
Well, let's mention my friend Jamal Khashoggi, who was drugged and flayed to death and dismembered in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. It was either Ankara, I believe. So I spent 20 years on the outer reaches of empire. These forces only quote unquote care about human rights when it's to their political advantage. There's no commitment to human rights in terms of everybody having a right to civil liberties and protection from extrajudicial killings. It's just, and we carried out. Look what we did in Iraq. Look what we did in Afghanistan with a drone program alone. And Daniel Hale, the courageous whistleblower who was a drone operator, who exposed the drone files, drone documents that showed that up to 90% of the people being killed by our drones were innocent civilians. So that hypocrisy sells, maybe in the United States, where most people don't understand the outer workings of empire, but I don't believe it sells in most of the rest of the world.
You mentioned Israel. I want to talk about the recent developments there in the Israel Palestine region. Jana Majidi, a 15-year-old Palestinian, was on the roof in her pajamas playing with a cat when an Israeli sniper shot her twice in her face. You already mentioned this. Earlier this year, we saw a similar situation with the Israeli sniper killing journalist Shireen Abu Akleh. Now we're seeing Benjamin Netanyahu returning to power as prime minister and incorporating right-wing forces that were previously banned in Israeli politics. How do you see the situation developing for Palestine going forward?
I think what's happening is the mask is being lifted from the apartheid state. It's always been an apartheid state, but in order for Netanyahu to get back in power, he's had to reach out to these Jewish extremists, these fanatic Zionists and religious bigots, and that has really exposed the lie of the old tropes that Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East, and hate and racism have no place within Israel, and they need to subjugate the Palestinians in order to protect themselves from terrorism. All of that is being ripped away, and the real face of Israel is being exposed, especially by these figures you mentioned. The old Kahana, the Ben Gvir's party. He's an old Kahanist. He was actually denied. He was rejected by the Israeli military because of his extremism. I covered Rabin. He was very involved in this far right wing movement that called for Rabin's assassination. They used to, at Netanyahu rallies, have an effigy of Rabin dressed as a Nazi and burn it. And Leah Rabin always blamed Bibi until she died for her husband's assassination. And I think that what we're going to see is, as bad as things are for the Palestinians, and they're pretty bad, especially with the numbers of killings. This is the worst death toll since 2006, if you exclude the Israeli bombardments of Gaza. That'll all be ratcheted up. I mean, we saw, for instance, the murder of this Palestinian. It was caught on video where he was shot 3 times and then pushed to the ground and executed by Israeli soldiers. And Ben Gvir called the Israeli officer a hero. As, by the way, he calls Baruch Goldstein, the Jewish settler who in 1994 massacred 29 Muslim worshippers in Hebron. So I think that what we're seeing is the rise of a kind of Jewish fascism. And in some ways, it's a more honest portrayal because of what the Israeli state is about, the apartheid state is about. And it's part of the reason why figures, certainly within the military and other parts of the Israeli establishment, are panicking over this proposed coalition government that Netanyahu is putting together, because it's just going to be impossible for them to disseminate the usual lie or lies that has worked to really cover up what Israel is and what it does.
Do you think that this will be the collapse of the apartheid state as we know it?
Well, it could just become it could just become an open despotism. And it's very difficult to, I don't think the apartheid state is going to collapse until we build a serious sanction movement like we did with South Africa. That's why I'm a big supporter of the boycott, divestment, and sanction movement. But I think that will fuel that movement and fuel the kind of repugnance towards Israel. We've already seen splits now within the liberal Jewish wing of the Israel lobby. Jeremy Ben-Yamin, he's the president of J Street, this liberal Zionist group, issued a public statement that called the government that Netanyahu was putting together, said it ran counter to the values of American Jews, and said that unequivocal support, what he called unquestioned loyalty to Israel, no matter what, is a disservice to the health of the Jewish community. So I think that it will certainly weaken the grip that Israel has, particularly within the United States, and that will create more opening for pressure. But I wouldn't go so far as to predict the fall of the apartheid state, although, of course, that's what I'd like to see.